So in the second chapter, kind of keeping on moving through, the second chapter, it's titled Choice in a World of Scarcity. We'll get through what we can today. Not super worried about it. But we're looking at this chapter is how do, either as an individual or a society, how do we make decisions using an economic mindset? Right. So what's the economic way to make decisions? Again, whether those be individually, socially. Then we close out with a little bit of what are some issues that come up with the economic mindset. So two main questions that are going to come up. One, do people act rationally? Do people act the way we say they should? No. The second thing is, do we want people to act the way that we think they should? And again, the answer is probably going to be no to that as well, because we'll kind of see as we go through some issues and some really bad things that can be led to if you use this pure rational mindset, and so on. So the first bit we're looking at is how we can make decisions as individuals. So with this, what we get into, kind of two of our first phrases for budget constraint, opportunity set. And both these, what they deal with is, I have my income, right? Every week, every month, every other week, whatever the case is, I have this check that comes in. I have to figure out how to spend it. So if a point lies on our budget constraint, this means that I'm purchasing I'm using a combination of consumption of goods that I can afford, given that I spend all of my income. Right. So this will be, so when we graph this out, it'll be the boundary, or that line on our opportunity set. And the second bit is the opportunity set itself. And this says, what kind of goods can I afford given my income? And this means I don't necessarily have to spend all of my income. Cool. So kind of two things. Budget constraint is a part of the opportunity set, but just because it's in the opportunity set doesn't mean it's on the budget constraint. So when we take these, the three things we'll be given when working this stuff out is the price of our goods, the price of two goods, and the budget we have. Our budget can be our income, it can be the budget, whatever the case is, it can be. But again, we have this limited amount of income. We have to choose what we want to purchase, what we need, and so on. So the example that we have is on your notes, and it gives us a budget of $10, and it says that burgers are $2 and bus tickets for 50 cents. And what we're going to end up doing is, so if we were going to draw this ourselves, we would, kind of the 2 points we would need to find is the maximum number of burgers we can afford. In this case, it would be our budget divided by the price of a burger. So which in this case would be 10 divided by 2, which means we could afford 5 burgers if we purchase no bus tickets. And that's where we see this point A is at 5 burgers and no bus tickets. Then the second thing we would want to find is the max number of bus tickets. So in this case, we would take, again, our budget and divide that by the price of a bus ticket, in which case this would give us $10 divided by 50 cents. So we have 0.5, which if we work those out, gives us 20 bus tickets. And that puts us right here. Then to find our budget constraint, we could go through, work everything out, or we could just connect these two. And in green, we have our budget constraint. And then everything underneath that in red, we would have our opportunity set. So in red would be something like that. And when we're thinking about this, so we're like, well, cool, we can see what we can afford, but how do we know what we want to purchase? Right. And one of the issues going to come up is where exactly we want to end up could depend on where we live, what our values are, or what we like. So if you live in, if you are and I'm going to kind of take two extremes. If I am an omnivore, that means I eat everything, meaning I'm not a vegetarian that lives in Boone, Iowa. Bus tickets don't really do us that. I know we have a system, but we don't have this elaborate system where bus tickets would really do us that much good. So for me, basically, odds are we have to have cars. If you live in Boone or maybe not in Ames, but in Boone, you'd pretty much, it'd be hard to not have a car. Excuse me. So we have that. But for me, if I am a omnivore, I mean, I eat everything. I live in Boone, where bus tickets really aren't going to do me that well. But maybe maybe this summer, if we go to New York or Chicago, right, I might buy some transit tickets or whatever. I would probably be somewhere up here in this blue range, right? Meaning I might buy a couple bus tickets here and there, but for the most part, I drive where I need to go. So I can focus more and be up here where I want more burgers, not that many bus tickets. And for the sake of this example, somehow, some way, you received a grant, and the rules of this funding is they can only be used towards burgers and bus tickets. I know in the real world you could switch for other foods, but this $10 can only be used for these two goods. But on the other hand, suppose that, so on one extreme, we might be up here. This is our omnivore in Boone. But on the other side, maybe I'm a vegetarian, right? I'm a vegetarian, odds are I don't really want a burger. And I probably should have added this in. These burgers are 100% beef. They're not the Beyond Burgers, not the Impossible Burgers, right? They're 100% beef, and so on. Beyond and Impossible are both vegetable-based burgers. But if I'm in this case where I'm a vegetarian or I'm a vegan, I guess if you're a vegan, you are a vegetarian, but if I'm one or the other, or maybe I'm gluten-free, I really probably don't want to be eating a bunch of burgers, right? Because part of being vegetarian is you don't eat meat. So if that were my spot, I'd probably be down here. And suppose this, I'm a vegetarian that lives in New York, right? This is the other extreme. So New York, your car doesn't really do you much well. We made when we were in New York, whenever we were there, we made the mistake of getting an Uber. So you go like around and realize, no, that's not the way to go. You should take trains and walk. Probably the two best ways to get around New York. But in that case, if we lived in New York City, your car doesn't really do you that much good, right? Because for the most part, you get everywhere. Everywhere you can go is quicker via train or maybe even walking. And unless you happen to be going out of the city a lot, your car isn't really going to do that much well if you live in New York City. So if I'm on this other end, I might be somewhere more, I'm going to stick with him, down here. So this would be someone, a vegetarian in, say, New York City. Well, up here we have an omnivore in Boone. Cool. So I have these two sides, and depending on where they are, they can be where they are. Or we can be somewhere in the middle. So we know not everybody in New York City is a vegetarian. Maybe some people in Boone travel to cities more. I'm sure there are vegetarians in Boone. Right, so we have combinations of them. But again, this just shows depending on what we prefer, what our values are, and even where we live can impact where we're going to want to purchase on this budget constraint. So we have that bit.
So if we were to be like in the middle of season,
Mhm.
that'd be like someone that lives in Ames taking the bus and then also
It could be, yeah. Yeah. Right, it could be. I mean, you're in New York. It could depend on who you are. Yeah, pretty much whatever you want it to be. Yeah, and if you're down at E, you live in the city, but maybe you eat meat, but you don't like burgers, right? Or maybe you have a very rare taste for a burger, so maybe that puts you there. Whereas there are people who they want to eat a burger pretty much every meal, right? We have all groups and everywhere we go. So with our budget constraint, we're gonna see is that we're going to get into what's called this opportunity cost. And what this is going to look at is what this looks at is what do I have to give up to gain something that I desire. So when we think about opportunity costs, we're going to see is kind of three ways we can look at it. The first bit is we look at, it says the cost of an item is the lost opportunity to do or consume something else. So if I go out and I go whatever I decide to do, I can't do something else at the same time. All right, so if I went today I went to Dutch Oven and got a soup for lunch because that's all I really felt like. Since I went there to get a soup, I didn't go to Subway, McDonald's, or anywhere else. I went there to get that bowl of soup. So the first bit, right, we look at what we give up to gain our items. But the second way we can look at it is we give up what's the next best alternative. And for this, we'll look at an example of going to school versus going to work, and we'll get into that in a couple minutes. But we can say as well, so if I'm going to take this path, what's my second best option, and what benefit would that bring, or what value does that have to me? And that is what I give up by doing whatever I desire. And kind of a third way we can think of it is the cost of it itself. So if I went out and I spent $5 on lunch today, that's $5 I cannot spend on anything else because it got spent on my lunch. If I spend $500 on a new TV, right, that's $500 I can't spend on anything else, or whatever the case may be for you. But we're going to see with economics, and at the very end of last Wednesday, we said that nothing's free, and free is a bad word in the sense of economics. This third reason is why, because as we look at different items or different ideas, we're going to see that everything has an opportunity cost, and basically this third point is going to be where we see that nothing is free. So if we look at our example that we started with, and we think about our burgers and our bus tickets, and the question that we have come up is, what is the opportunity cost of a burger? So what I might say, and we can note that A is 5 burgers and 0 bus tickets. B is 4 and 4. C is 3 and 8. D is 2 and 12. E is 1 and 16. And F is 0 and 20. So we have these points. So when you think about what's the opportunity cost of a burger, the question we're asking is, how many bus tickets do I have to give up to earn or gain one burger? So if I go from, say, C up to B, right, in this case, I gain 1 burger, but how many bus tickets do I give up? So in this case, I gain 1 burger, but to do that, I go from 8 bus tickets to 4 bus tickets. So I have to give up 4 bus tickets. So in this case, the opportunity cost of a burger is going to be 4 bus tickets. Then the discussion examples, we're just going to kind of skip over them for now, and we'll kind of keep going. So when we're making decisions, and we're going to get an example with college after this little bit here. When we're making decisions, what we're going to get into is what's called this marginal analysis. And this is what we're going to do is we're going to look at the benefits and costs of consuming or of choosing a little more, a little less of a good. So what this means is, so we're thinking about this marginal analysis. What this means is that when I'm deciding how many years of school do I want to go to, how many meals do I want to eat out every month, or whatever the case is, I'm probably not going to come in. So if we think about schooling, you're probably not going to come in the day you graduate high school and put 8 years of school, 8 years tuition down for schooling to pay for everything all the way up to your doctorate degree, right? And when we think about what types of steps we want to take, right, and as I say this, I'm not saying it's bad to have long-term goals. I would just make the argument that you don't necessarily want to have your blinders on either, right? So a lot of people, they graduate high school and they're like, you know what sounds like fun? Forensic science, right? Because I've seen CSI and they find this body on the side of the road and they just use the body and plug it into this magic machine and they find out everything, right? So forensic science, it sounds interesting. So I graduated from high school and I want to go get my master's or get some high degree in forensic science. But then I get into undergrad and I figure out that it's not what the TV shows make it sound like it is, right? It's not that exciting. It's not that interesting. Instead, there's a lot of boring stuff with it, right? And you're not always. It's not like the TV shows where, 24, you get 24 hours to solve this mystery, right? Most of the time, it doesn't work that way. So, or even if we think about law, right? When we think about if you're not in the field at all, or you've never been in a courtroom much, when you think of law, you think of these movies where it's like they have these very, very, what's the word, dramatic law scenes. So if you think about A Few Good Men, you have the "you can't handle the truth" moment, right? And that's what you think law is. When in fact, once you get into it, you're like, oh. And if anyone's going to be a lawyer, I'm not saying that it's a bad field, but from the common, it's not what the commoner or someone who's outside of the field necessarily thinks it is. Because we get these ideas from movies of what a certain career would be like. So when we think about this marginal analysis, right, suppose I say I want to be a lawyer. Right, graduate from high school, I want to be a lawyer. Instead of coming through and saying, all right, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to go get my JD, put my blinders on and go. Instead, what I might want to do is come through, say I get my associate's or bachelor's, get to that first step. And then once I get to that point, figure out what can I do with life, right? Do I still want to be a lawyer? Do I want to go into some other field? Right, because there are opportunities that, there are things out there that you just don't, how do I put it? When you graduate high school, there are jobs or fields out there that you don't know about. Right, for me, this is one of them, right? I didn't, when I graduated, I had no idea about being able to teach college. But it's something, hey, right, as you go through, you figure out, well, where can I go? And so on. And for me, I also took my first education course. I'm like, nope, I do not want to do high school. Because high school, you have to deal with like parents and stuff. Whereas here, it's like, I can't talk to you. It's fun. But anyway, marginal analysis, we take a little bit more, a little less of a good. We don't have these, we have long-term goals, right? Don't say that I'm coming through saying get rid of all, burn your long-term goals and forget about them, right? You just don't want to have the blinders on. So we have that marginal analysis. And with this, we're going to get into, it's called utility. And what this tells us the satisfaction and value that one item brings us. And this could be from consuming a good, or it could be from taking an action. Right, so if you're interested, if you're going into something that you love, right, and hopefully you're not in a major where you're like, oh, I hate what I'm going into, because right now is your chance to, get into something you love. When you think about utility, so for me, I mean this, I'm not saying this to make the college sound good or anything like that. I love what I do, even though today if I had a full schedule, I probably would have called in today, but it's not worth it for a 50-minute class. Even given that there are days you don't feel good and all that stuff, I love what I do and I actually enjoy going to work, right? So we have that utility, and it could be from consuming a good, or it could be from taking an action, doing something, going somewhere, whatever the case may be. And with our utility, we're going to see is this law of diminishing marginal utility. And what this says that receive more of a good, the additional utility of the additional good declines. So what this diminishing marginal utility tells us is two examples. The one they give is if you have a pizza, the first slice of pizza does a lot more for you than a sixth slice of pizza, right? Because by the time you're on the sixth, you might be at that point where, well, I don't have enough where it's worth having leftovers, so I'm just going to eat it. Whereas the first slice, you're hungry, right? And it's good because you're hungry and so on. The second bit of this that I think sometimes might help make it more clear is we think about money. So suppose I had a $100 bill. $100 right now would mean more to any of us than it would to say Bill Gates, right? To Bill Gates, $100 is chump change. To us, and even though $100 wouldn't be like life-changing, quit my job, quit school and retire, right? There's a decent amount that we can do with $100 if we had an extra 100, right? So we had that. So basically, since we're in this spot where more than likely our among us, our assets are relatively low, extra $100, it could help us out a little bit. But to Bill Gates, who is a billionaire, multi-billionaire, excuse me, $100 is pocket change. Probably not though, because I bet Bill Gates doesn't carry cash. But it's same idea, yeah. Excuse me. So we have our law of diminishing marginal utility. So what this can bring us into, it won't. See, where are we? We have that. I'm going to try and get through this example. As I said, I don't have a quiz today just because, a little bit because of weather, but a little bit because a class kind of crept up on me today. I'm not super worried about it. But suppose that we're thinking about opportunity costs. We consider the opportunity costs of school versus work. If I make a choice, do I go to school or do I go to work? And when we're saying we go to school, in this case, we're saying the traditional sense of going to school. So I do a full-time deal where I'm at school. I don't have a second job. I don't have anything else going on. It just is what it is. And going to work is going to work. I'm going to get the setup for this made, and then on Friday, whenever we meet again, we'll get it finished. So basically, the setup that we're going to have is for each one, we're going to have a cost and a benefit. So if we go to school and work, so if we go to school, the costs that we're going to see, and I'm going to simplify things, that way it's easy. But the main costs that we're going to see are tuition. And in this sense, tuition refers to tuition, books, fees, all that other stuff you have is included in tuition. Then we have our rent or our room and our food. Then if we go to work, our costs, we don't have to pay anything to work, at least hopefully we don't. But when we go to work, we do have to pay for our rent and our food. Maybe you have to buy a uniform or maybe something like that, but I'm going to kind of ignore that for now. But each of these will have benefits as well. So when you think about the benefits of going to school, there are kind of three main things that I highlight. The first two are why you're here. So I kind of think that, hey, if you're here, you're for some combination of these two. The first is for a higher wage. The second is for a job that is more desirable to you, right? So, or some combination of the two. Right, when we think about the benefits of going to school, that's kind of the idea is one, we can have that higher future earnings. Right, and that's what, when you have like college go week or whatever it is, they say, oh yeah, if you graduate high school, you're gonna have this much money a year, but if you graduate college, you get this much, and so on, right? They show us that, and they say, well, and if you drop out of high school, you're like your life's ruined or whatever the case is, right? They throw that stuff at us to get us to want to go to college. But we have these higher future earnings that we expect to have if we go to school. The second bit is a more desirable job. And the third bit we said is what I'm going to call the college experience. And take that to mean what you want it to mean, right? If that means networking, if that means obviously you meet new people, if that means going to basketball, football games, it can mean that. If it means partying, it can mean that, right? But when you think about the college experience, it can be what you want it to mean. And we'll kind of get into more detail now on Friday. And then the benefit of work is going to be that we make money today. Current wages, that is, we make money now. And we'll do on, so we have the setup. So on Friday, we'll kind of do a breakdown and look at the opportunity cost for each good and figure out, well, what is the opportunity cost? We're going to see is that our tuition, rent, and food are fairly measurable, but our rent and food are going to cancel out because we have to pay that no matter what we do. But when you think about benefits, our higher future and our current wages are going to be fairly straightforward, fairly measurable, but more desirable job is going to be very much depending on who you are. There are some people who jobs I can get with a high school diploma are like my dream jobs. There are others who want to go out and be doctors, lawyers, and all that stuff. Then college experience, again, that'll depend on who you are and how much value that is to you. Have a good couple days. Be smart. Be safe. Yep. Have fun. If you need anything, feel free. Let me know.